Good morning and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for tuning into yet another episode of Masterclass this year. And my name is Siddiq, and I'm one of the product experts at Service Desk Plus Cloud, and I'm going to be the presenter for today's session. So today we're going to talk about how you can utilize visual life cycles and how you can build workflows to standardize your ITSM practices. Quick heads up on today's agenda. Today, we will be looking into on how you can build request and problem life cycles to handle your day-to-day incidents and major incidents. We'll also see how you can build workflows to effectively handle changes and releases within your organization. And we'll also see how you can create life cycles to handle your inventory, your assets, and how you can reduce the unnecessary cost. We'll also take a look into our latest feature with Zia blended conversation, which itself would act as if an L1 technician, a frontline technicians to answer your frequently asked questions. Finally, we will take a look into our latest integration with Zoho Circuits, our low-code or no-code platform, which would enable you to create single-touch automation workflows. To better understand today's features and use cases, we will be looking into a company like Zilker, where Zilker is a rapidly developing telecommunications company, which currently is undergoing a major tech overhaul. As a result, they have purchased Service Desk Plus recently to level up their ITSM game. We'll quickly take a look into few of Zilker's challenges that they are facing on a daily basis and how Service Desk Plus help them overcome those challenges. The first and foremost, the major challenges that they face is the technicians not able to handle the incidents, especially the major incidents that are coming across into their organization, and they were not able to handle problems effectively within their organization. What they were looking for is a tool that can guide the technicians through the entire workflow from the point a ticket is being opened until they are closed. So Service Desk offers features such as request lifecycles and problem lifecycles that helps you as an admin to build an entire workflow guiding your technicians to handle any major incidents that occurs within the organization. Along with that, they also had an issue where they were not able to effectively handle their asset inventory, often leading to unnecessary cost. And just like request and problem lifecycle, Service Desk also offers asset lifecycle, which can help you build an entire workflow to handle your assets that are being procured from the point of procurement until they're disposed from the organization. One other major challenge that they faced was not able to effectively handle changes and releases within their organization. And the Zilker's team, were looking for a tool that could help them build workflows that can drive a change or a release from the point of submission until it's closed throughout all the stages. So Service Desk offers features such as change workflows and release workflows, which you can visually build, and you can connect nodes between one stage to another, making sure that is minimum or no manual interventions required for your technicians to progress a change or a release. One other major challenge that Zilker is facing is the huge flow or the huge number of incoming tickets that they're facing on a daily basis. They did not have a proper screening process or a chatbot that could help the end users avoid creating unnecessary tickets. So basically, Zilker was looking for a chatbot or a specific agent that could act as if a frontline L1 technician to screen the frequently asked questions by providing the answers then and there to their end users and avoiding creating so many number of tickets. So our latest feature that we have introduced is blended conversations with our Zia chatbot that would help you build as an admin an entire conversation flow to guide your end users and provide answers to them effectively. And if not, if only required, you can redirect your end users to create tickets within the system. Finally, Zilker's major challenge was for services that they handle, for example, repetitive automatic changes or a service request like onboarding or offboarding would usually involve a lot of repetitive and mundane tasks that needs to be performed by the technician in order to close the ticket, and they were looking for a perfect automation opportunity that can do that for them instead of having their technicians overload with a lot of tasks. So our latest feature, Zoho Circuits, which we are integrating with Service Desk Plus, will enable you to create an entire single touch automation workflows which you can build to achieve such use cases. Right, so we'll go ahead and view all these features in live and how Zilker was able to overcome these challenges by building such automations one by one. First off, we'll start with the problem and the incident lifecycle. As I mentioned, Zilker had a lot of incoming tickets, and out of which, whenever they're faced with a major incident, they were not having a proper guidance in order to handle such major incidents or problems within the organization. And such, they went and sought out to the help of building a lifecycle. Let me quickly take you to my technician login page, and I'll go back to the request module. All right, so as a Zilker's employee, if you're facing a major issue, we have a dedicated template for that, a major incident template. So once I load that, I'm being presented to fill in the basic necessary details. So let me go ahead and fill that out one by one. So it's a urgent ticket. So since it's a major incident, the impact is going to be such that it's affecting the entire business. The urgency, it's pretty urgent. So the moment I choose the impact and urgency, automatically the priority is set to high because it's a high priority ticket. Let me go ahead and fill out the other necessary options as well. So it's enterprise, and here the VPN is down for the day. And usually in such cases, you will be bombarded with a lot of incoming tickets from an end user. And since it's a major incident, this needs to be handled much more carefully. So once a ticket is created, as usual, you have the details tab, the conversation tab, you have all the details already put in. But to the right-hand side pane, if I move my mouse over towards the status icon, you can see that you are not able to change the status of this ticket. It stays on open, and in order to progress or move this ticket from one state to another, you now have a transition bar that pops up right in front of you. This transition bar will guide the technician on how they need to progress further, and through every clicks and every turns, they are presented with options that they need to fill. And also you can make sure that proper notifications and informations are sent out to the relevant stakeholders. So in this case, a ticket has been created. So I'm presented with three options. One, if this is not a valid ticket or if the issue is already attended, I can go ahead and cancel this ticket. Or if the task that is within the ticket, you can see that there are a lot of tasks that I need to complete in order to make sure that this ticket is effectively handled. If those are completed, I can go ahead and move this ticket to a different state such that the tasks are completed. But in this case, I would need more details. And I'm also, once again, the moment I click on this particular transition, I'm shown with a pop-up to fill in the mandatory fields. Almost everything is filled, but I still need to fill in what is the impact that is being faced by the end user. So in this case, the USDC users are not able to log in to the application, right? So I'm going to go ahead and click on save. The moment I click on save, to the right-hand side, you can immediately see that the status of the ticket is moved from open to on hold, and the transition is now changed to a different set of options. So even at this point, I can go ahead and cancel the ticket if needed, or at this point, since we are now into the next step, I need to go ahead and my technicians need to start handling the task that is associated with the ticket. So let's assume that everything is completed. Every single task that has been assigned to the right group and owner have done their job, and it's now complete. It's now at 100%. I can go ahead and say that all the task is completed. It's success, and we have provided a temporary solution to enable the users to start working again, right? So once I do that, I'm being presented with a pop-up saying that I need to fill in the resolution. So that's one of the mandatory fields that have mandated as part of the lifecycle. We'll get to that bit in a moment, where we'll show you how this entire lifecycle works, how the technicians are being guided through this process. So I'm going to scroll down and I'm going to enter a resolution, the same resolution. We have provided a temporary resolution. So I'm going to go ahead and update it. And now if I click on success, the ticket now moves to the next status. The ticket is solved. The ticket that was raised that the end user is not able to log in, it's now solved. They are now able to log in as part of a temporary solution that we provided. But still, it's a major incident for the organization. The the problem management team still needs to take a look on why this happened, on how to prevent this from the future from happening again, and also how to provide a temporary, a permanent fix. So right now I have two options as part of the transition. Either I can say that the resolution is acknowledged and close the ticket if we have provided a permanent fix, but not in this case. We have only provided a temporary fix. So I need to trigger a problem, a problem ticket to handle this as a major problem. So the moment I click on trigger problem, I'm getting a pop-up that says that transition is executed, and the status is almost automatically sent to RCA in progress, which is root cause analysis is in progress. And let me quickly open problem module in a new tab. Right. So as part of this automation, you can see that a ticket has been raised with the same subject, and all the necessary details are now being automatically populated into the problem ticket, and your problem management team can now start working on the permanent fix and also start analyzing what caused this major issue in the first place. So this, once again, you can see that this problem has its own life cycle. The name of the life cycle is right here, the application problem, and you have your own set of rules that is going to guide this problem from its open state until its closed state. I can say that I need to begin the impact analysis. It's going to ask me what CIs are involved, and if I choose the relevant details, only then I will be able to move forward to the next step. All right. So automatically, I'm now into the analysis stage where our team will start analyzing the CIs on what happened and what was the logs and what that was recorded for this entire issue. So this is how Zilker was able to handle a major incident within their organization, making sure all their technicians always follow a guidance or a workflow that was built by the admin in the first place, making sure that it was effectively handled at all times. So where do you do all these automations? Where do you build a life cycle that can drive a problem or an incident in the first place? So you need to go back to setup. So let me open that once again in a new tab. Right. So under automation, you have a dedicated section that's called Lifecycle. And we just worked with the major incident lifecycle that helped us create the problem as well and also close the incident ticket. You can see this lifecycle has the status that we just dealt with. From open, we went to on hold, and then we resolved. And we also triggered a problem, which once again put the ticket status to RCA in progress. And if I go back here and say that the RCA is sent, and if I click on save, the ticket, it's closed. So if I go back to lifecycle, so that's the last transition on my lifecycle. So each and every button that we clicked had its own purpose. It asked me to fill in a couple of mandatory fields. It triggered a problem automatically. You can see that I was forced to enter a resolution as part of this mandatory rules. So all these are done as part of this clicks that we have in between the green colored icons. So the ticket was opened. So we were on open state. And at this point, I had three options, right? So I had need more details, which sent the ticket directly to the on hold status. So let me quickly click on that. So the need more details asked me to fill a couple of mandatory fields that was as part of the during transition, where the group priority, impact, and impact details need to be filled in order to move this ticket successfully to on hold. But if I clicked on canceled or rejected, I would have directly been sent to the canceled status, which is also part of this entire transition. We also had, so we moved from open to on hold. And at this point, we clicked on task completed, and which moved the ticket into the next state, that is resolved. We also saw how a problem ticket was created as part of this transition. So that is available under trigger problem. So if I click on that, this was only shown to an SD admin, and once the button was clicked, we had a rule that could execute a custom function, and that in turn created a problem. So we have written a deluge script that could do that for us in the background. So this is how you build a workflow, I'm sorry, a life cycle that could drive a ticket from its open state until close. So let's start building one, and that would give us more insights on how this entirely works. So I'm going to go ahead, click on new lifecycle, and I'm going to give this a name. And you can associate which template this ticket, this lifecycle needs to be followed. So this is a multi-select field, so you can choose as many templates as you want and click on next. And immediately you will be shown with an empty space. To the right-hand side, you will have all the statuses that you have within the system. One of the major advantage of having or building a lifecycle is that in your organization, you might have 10 to 20 different statuses, which at all times cannot apply for all types of tickets. I mean, for a different service ticket, you'll have a different set of templates. For, I'm sorry, statuses. For an incident ticket, you'll have a different set of statuses. So this will make sure that you can only incorporate the statuses that is required for these templates. So I'm going to say, from the point, you're going to open the ticket, and from there, you can put the ticket on hold or directly cancel, or you can put the ticket in progress. And once everything is done, I'm going to resolve it and finally close it. Right. So first, I've decided what statuses that needs to be incorporated for this life cycle. And from this point, it's a matter of drawing nodes between one status to another. How do you want to progress the ticket? So as I mentioned, I want to go from open to on hold. Also, from the open status, if it's not a valid ticket, I want to cancel it. And if at all I'm going to go forward and I need an assistance from a different team member, I'm going to put the ticket on in progress. So from on hold, I can either go back to open again, or I can say that the issue is resolved. The same is going to work with the in progress ticket as well, where I can go back to open, or I'm going to resolve the ticket. Once it is resolved, it's a matter of closing the ticket. So you can have your own set of rules that is happening. We'll talk about that later. Even from the cancel state, you want to close the ticket. I'm sorry, you want to end the transition. Likewise, from the close state, I'm going to end the transition as well. So this is a very simple workflow that I've come up with to explain the features. So once we are done with drawing the nodes on how you want to progress the ticket from one state to another, it's now time to build the transition buttons. Right, from open to on hold. If you want to put, if any technician wants to put a ticket on the on hold status, they need to click on this button, which I'm going to name awaiting user details. And once I click on done, you can see that that has turned into a clickable transition button. And to the right hand side, you'll have three options. What needs to happen before? That is, before clicking the button, do you want this button to only be shown to a specific people, or whenever a specific condition matches? So if I go into scope and if I choose roles, I can say that this button needs to be only shown to an SD admin. It need not be a custom, a predefined role. It can also be a custom role. I can choose whatever role that I want, and only technicians with that particular role can access this button. And along with that, I can also add one more criteria where I can say that this button should only be shown if the priority is low. If not, I have a different button. So once again, this is a very straightforward workflow where I only incorporated one status. But if you want to have multiple status and have different criteria, that if it is low, show this button. If it is not low, if it's high, medium, or critical, show a different button. So that's before. So what needs to happen before clicking this button, and then we'll move on to during. So while you're clicking on this, what needs to happen? So when we put our ticket to on hold, we were presented with options that needs to be filled, the mandatory fields. So we can go ahead and add all the fields. You will be presented with every field that is available on the ticket. So you can go ahead and choose the required options. And once you choose it, so this will be mandated. So the moment your technician clicks on it, they need to fill in these buttons, right? Once again, you can also have rule sets on when this needs to happen. And while they're clicking on this button, if a particular condition matches, that is, if category is a desktop hardware, go ahead and update the field value. Whatever field you might have on the ticket can be automatically updated. So that's during. And what needs to happen after? So once you click on this button, once you've filled in all the mandatory fields, once the condition matches and the field update values are also executed, what needs to happen after? So that's what we did as part of triggering the problem, where once we clicked on trigger problem button, it automatically created a problem for us. So that's as part of this rule set, where I can say that if it can be without any condition, whenever the button is clicked, go ahead and execute a custom function. A custom function which we saw earlier, as if you can create a delete script and do that for us, or you can add a task to the ticket, send a custom notification, or you can trigger a webhook. A webhook is basically used to contact a different third-party cloud application. You can do that. You can do a lot of actions such as post or get details, and as per your requirement. So likewise, you need to build buttons for each and every statuses, and during every clicks, you can make sure as an admin, your technicians follow a predefined workflow. Using this workflow, Zilker was able to make sure that all the tickets within their organization were handled with a predefined workflow. And as I mentioned, we also have the same capability available for problem as well. So that's available as part of this drop down on the top. And if you click on problem, you can go ahead and create a similar one. So this is what we followed on our problem, which we just saw earlier. Likewise, you can create multiple lifecycle associated with the different templates, and this should automatically kick in. So using this feature, we were able to build a request and a problem lifecycle with an interface that was just drag and drop and connecting nodes from one to another. We were able to set transitions and what needs to happen every time a transition is clicked. We also saw how problem module had its own section for root cause analysis, and even that can be mandated as part of lifecycle, making sure every problem is audited in the right way. Throughout this entire scenario, every time a button is clicked, you can make sure that a custom notification is sent to the right stakeholder, keeping them informed. As part of the during transition, we also saw how you can update fields throughout the ticketing process, either manually by mandating them and having your technicians fill them, or as part of automations, you can add them as a criteria. If the condition matches, the system will do that for you. So we also saw how you can perform custom actions, where you can, with the after transition, you can trigger task or run a webhook or even execute a custom function. And this in turn will make sure that all the problems and major incidents are handled effectively. We'll move on to the next challenge that Zilker was facing. That was that Zilker had a tough time handling their changes and releases within their organization. So we'll quickly take you back to my technician login page. And this time I'm going to raise a change request. So I'll go ahead, and Zilker usually often they perform a server upgrade request. And in order to perform the server upgrade, they will usually create a change request and go through the approval process. So immediately when I load the server upgrade request template, to the right hand side, you can see that a workflow is automatically associated to it, the server upgrade request workflow that will drive this change from the submission until the closure stage. Once again, all the necessary details are already filled as part of the template. You can see that because this is usually a repetitive upgrade request that's done on the organization. So everything is pre-filled, and once just making sure that everything is correct, I'm going to go ahead and raise this change. And the change manager needs to be changed to a different user. Right. Great. So once the change is created, you can see that all the necessary details are right in front of you. To the left-hand side, you have the stages, and to the right, you have the workflow that is being associated to this request. To view this workflow, you have an option on the top. If I click on it, this would show me the workflow that is driving this change through the entire process. So here we have a change that is being submitted, and once it's submitted, it's checking for the mandatory fields as a part of the wait for condition. And if that satisfies, it's accepted. And then we move on to planning, and we have a couple of statuses under the planning stage. And for each and every status, we have a different action that's happening. So during planning in progress, we have a task that is added to the change automatically. If the task is completed, we are approving it. We're moving on to the CAB evaluation stage and kicking off a lot of approvals. During this process, on the first step, we're also checking if the change risk is high or low. If it is high, we're sending out a notification, making sure that we are involving a high risk change and the stakeholders are notified, if it is no, we're directly moving on to the next step automatically. So this will make sure that a workflow is in place and almost all actions are done by the system without a manual intervention, just checking for conditions here and there. And if everything is matching, it just progresses to the next stage or the status. And meanwhile, while progressing throughout, it also triggers tasks, sends out approvals and notifications. And you also have options to go ahead and trigger custom functions as well. So we'll see how we can build one in the later part. And let me just quickly progress the change from one stage to another to show you how this all works together. Right. So here I'm going to say that this is accepted. The moment I click on save, the change details are now updated, and it usually takes a couple of seconds for the change to progress from one stage to another. The workflow will directly visually show you what's happening. And here, the change manager, the change risk, change type, and asset involved shouldn't be empty. That's the case because we filled everything during submission. So automatically, once that is satisfied, we are now into the planning stage. So here on the planning stage, we have a couple of checks that needs to be done. So while it's on planning in progress, you want a task to be triggered, right? So let's check if that's done. So in the planning stage, if I go into task, you can see that the meeting with admin and network teams is automatically done. It's automatically triggered. And likewise, you can make sure this entire change is progressed from one stage to another. And while it's being done, all the necessary actions are also taking place. So where do you do all these workflow builders? You need to go back to setup. Under automation, you have workflows. So if you open workflows, so these are the workflows that Zilker usually work with. And in this case, we just saw how server upgrade request works. And this is how you build it. To the right hand side, you have all the options available. It's just a drag and drop canvas. You can just drag and drop whatever condition that you want to check. And if it satisfies, you can take a different set of actions or move from one stage or a state to another. If it does not, you can take a different set of actions. So here, as we mentioned, we have a mandatory rule that is checking if the details are filled. If yes, we automatically move on to the accepted stage. If not, we would still, the timer would run. It will stay on a loop. And meanwhile, we're also changing if the change risk, if it's a yes or no. So if I click on edit, it's checking if the change risk is high. If it's yes, it sends out a notification, and that in turn is sending an approval. You can see that right here. And if it's approved, this node is taking me to the approved stage. If it is denied, I'm going to say that the particular one is rejected, and the rejected state automatically closes the ticket altogether, the change request altogether. So let me go ahead and build a workflow live, so that will give us more perspective on what we're working here. I'm going to name this as MC workflow. I can define if it's going to be a general one or if it's an emergency workflow, and going ahead. Okay, so let's create one. Right. So any change should compulsorily have a submission and a closure stage. So that's by default added to the canvas. And other than that, any other stages, it's optional and you can add them as per your requirement. So it's not that every stage needs to be involved for every single changes that you handle within your organization. So you have the option to drag and drop the required stage. So here I'm going to say under planning, I want planning in progress, or if it's approved, or if it's rejected. And even the statuses are chosen as per requirement. So you can choose all the ones that you need, or you can directly add a new status right then and there and add them to the workflow. So once that is done, so I'm going to say once it's submitted, I want to go to the planning stage. And from planning, I want to move to evaluation, check for the approvals, and then directly implement it. So it's in progress, either completed or we back out. Right. So these are the stages that is involved in my workflow. So I'm going to just rearrange them. Right. From this point, it's just a matter of connecting one stage and status to another. Meanwhile, while you're doing it, we can also have a lot of actions that can be taken. So once a submission, a change is submitted, if you want to automatically check for the priority, let's say I want to immediately check what's the priority. If the priority is high, I'm going to name this as priority check. And immediately I'm going to put that note here. If it is, and yes, I want to send out a notification to the relevant group members. So I'm going to choose change users and roles. I can choose the group member. So whichever group this change is being created, everybody within the group will be notified. Say auto notification to group members, and I can add whatever detail that I need to send along with this notification email. With just use of the dollar symbol, I can leverage all the fields within the change directly here, and I can just save and select. And once it is done, I can say if the priority is high, I want to send that. If it is no, directly go ahead and accept this particular change. So I can either only send a notification and go back to accepted, or in this case, since it's a high priority change, I also want to get an approval from high priority change approval. Right? I can choose how and who needs to approve. It's anybody. I can choose a lot of people. Even I can choose individual change approval users. I can just choose the required people and just directly have one. So the moment a notification is sent, I immediately want to trigger an approval, and only if it is approved, go ahead and have this as accepted. If it is rejected, I want to directly close this change as cancelled. So since I'm going to assume that it's accepted, so if it's accepted, I want to go to planning in progress. So while it's being planned, if I want to take a couple more actions, like once again, you have an option to send out notifications again, you have approvals on the right hand side. Other than that, you can also take other actions such as field update, or you can even add tasks. So if I just drag and drop a task node, I can choose either an existing task, and it would be automatically added to that particular stage. And I just need to connect a node right here. And once it is done, I can go back to approved. And also, other than that, you also have an option where you can execute a custom function, a webhook, or even invoke a timer. So if you need any help in building a custom function that needs to satisfy a particular use case, do reach out to our support, and we will analyze your use case and we'll help you building a custom function that could help you achieve that. Along with that, you just do not have only an if condition, you also have a wait for condition, which we just checked. Likewise, so if you want to check that, if either like if category is empty, wait for this particular thing to be completed, and only then go ahead and progress to the next status. Along with that, you have a switch condition. A switch condition is basically a multiple if, wherein we just saw how we just performed a priority check where if the change risk is high, we wanted to perform a couple of actions. But what if we wanted to check multiple actions to be done at the same time? So for high, low, and medium, if you want to have different set of actions, you can invoke a switch, wherein for, let's say, at this point, once it is approved, check for change risk again. If it is high, go to a different status. If it is low, directly approve, and so on. So likewise, so a switch is basically a multiple if, and you can invoke any field within a change, and you can have multiple conditions within them. We also have integrated Zoho Circuit with our application, which we'll talk about in the later part of a presentation today. And you can also invoke a circuit into the workflow at any point of time. Finally, you have branch nodes, which is fork and join, is to basically execute a couple of actions sequentially. If you don't want to have, if you want to break your workflow at any point and have a couple of approvals done at one point, where 3 approvals is triggered at one single branch, and at the same time, another 3 approvals is triggered at the other point, and you want to join them together based on all the actions, you can do that by just dragging and dropping a fork at any point on your workflow. So Using such a workflow builder, Zilker was able to build workflows within the organization, making sure that every change that was built within, that was deployed within their organization was following a predefined workflow. Just as we saw in incident and problem, change and release also work similarly, where you can just, with a click of a button on the top, you'll have the release workflow option. You can create the same kind of a workflow right here, and your releases will also go ahead and follow this predefined options. So you just once again, it's going to be a drag and drop canvas, and or you'll have all the other conditions that you can check and progress through an entire release. With this, Zilker was able to make sure that every change and release had its own workflow, and their admins were able to design them. And moving from one stage to another was very easy for them, because there was, at most times, there were no intervention that was required by a technician, because if a condition matches, automatically a change or a release goes to the next stage or the status. Throughout the entire workflow, they were also able to send out notifications, trigger custom functions, update fields. We saw how they were able to back out if at all an approval was denied, and at the same time, they were able to progress through the entire submission until closure without a hassle. With this, we'll move on to the next challenge that Zilker faced and how Service Desk Plus helped them overcome it. We talked earlier about how Zilker was struggling to handle their asset inventory and often leading to unnecessary cost. So to avoid that, or to help organizations effectively handle assets, Service Desk Plus offers asset lifecycles. Let me quickly take you to the setup page. And under automation lifecycle, we just saw how request and change the problem works. We also have another section that says asset lifecycle, right? So to demonstrate it, let me also open assets in a new tab. Right. Great. So this is my asset tab, and you can see all the assets listed. And I've already created an asset lifecycle for Zilker, where Zilker follows this particular workflow or this particular guideline in order to handle any new asset that they're logging into their system. So here, whenever an asset is logged, it goes from one state to another, checking for ifs and there's then and there, and it also sends out notifications if required. So let me go back to my asset module, and I'm going to log a new asset. So I'm going to quickly name this asset here. And this is a MacBook Pro, has a service desk tag of. So the moment I go ahead and create an asset, that is log an asset into the system, automatically, instead of having the state move from one point to another, you have a transition, just how we saw on the incident and problem module. So whenever an asset is procured, it directly goes into in-store state, where it's added to the inventory. And from this point, I only have two options. Either I can assign an asset to a particular user or a department, moving the asset to the in-use state, or if it stays to this entire period on the inventory, if it's not assigned to any particular user or a department, and if the warranty voids, I can directly move it to the expired state by clicking on the end of warranty state. So here I'm going to assign this asset to a particular user. So I'm going to put it to a user, and the warranty expiry date is set as well. 27th, I can add a comment which can be reported later. So right. So once I assign this asset to a particular user, automatically the state changes from in-store to in-use, and you have the details are populated on the details tab as well. So at this point, I have two more options, two more transition buttons that I can perform. Either if the end user reports an issue with the provided asset, I can click on defect and move the asset to the in repair state. Or once again, if there was no issue and if the user is happy throughout its warranty period, and if they're giving it back after the warranty period, I can click on end of warranty and move it to the expired state. So if I click on defect, automatically I've mandated a couple of fields here. So it asked me for the vendor, the expiry date, and the expiry date is once again going to be 23rd. And right. So the moment I click on it, it automatically goes to in repair. where I can submit this asset to the vendor, update comments as and when required. And once again, if they are able to successfully repair, I can click on repaired successfully and put it back to in use and assign it to Ashley. If not, if it is irreparable, if you're not able to bring it back to life, I can just go ahead and click on dispose asset. And once again, that asks me for a couple of mandatory fields. And usually if it's repairable, I can just click on repair. That takes me back into the repair state. So if I click on end of warranty, which means the asset has expired and there is no more transition available. So we have done this as part of the life cycle, which we saw right here. And we can see that it's similarly how it works for the request and problem lifecycle. I've dragged and dropped the statuses that is required. In this case, it's in store, in use, in repair, expired, and disposed. So the moment an asset is added, it's going to in store. And from this point, I'm giving two options. Either I can assign it and put it to in use, or expire it by clicking on end of warranty. And the options are also similar, where you have before, during, and after. Where before you can say when this needs to be shown and to whom it needs to be shown. During, where you can mandate, and you can also perform a couple of actions right here by field updating if a particular condition matches. And at the same time, if you click on after, where in this case, whenever an end of warranty is clicked and put it to the expired state, I want to send out a notification to the department head saying that this asset has expired its warranty period, right? So using such life cycles, and it's here we saw an example of workstation, but you can create multiple life cycles for different product types. And using these life cycles, Zilker was able to make sure that all the assets were properly logged and handled from the point of procurement until they're disposed, right? So we'll move on to the next major hurdle that Zilker faced, was such that they had a huge flow of incoming tickets on a daily basis, but they were under-equipped and they were not able, the technicians were not able to handle them, because most of them were just common questions that was asked by the end users, but which then took a lot of effort by their technicians to open them, resolve them, and add the right notes. They were looking for a tool that could do that for them, a conversation builder which could interact with their end users to provide them with the answers if it is answerable by the bot itself, and help them out then and there. If not, also redirect and guide the end users to create a ticket on the system. So to do that, we have our blended conversation feature available with Zia now. Let me go back to home, and you have Zia on the bottom of the page. So the moment you click on Zia, so just give it a couple of seconds, let it boot. Right. So here, as part of the quick actions, I have a lot of quick actions that can be done as a technician and an end user. And if I have a very common question to which I don't want to create a ticket, wherein I want to see if this Zia or my chatbot can help me out with, I can just directly click on that, which will give me what are all the commonly asked questions. So Zilker usually faces with these kind of questions on a daily basis, where the end users can't send email, their computer is slow, they're having issues with printer, they have a VPN connectivity. So here, if I have a printer issue, if I just click on that, so Zilker automatically sends a document on what can be done, a first level troubleshooting. And if this resolves my problem, I can click on yes, and this makes sure that there is not an unnecessary ticket added to the system. If not, if it is still unresolved, if you have a very complicated issue, I can go ahead and click on no. That would redirect me so saying that it's unfortunately it couldn't help me, but I can directly raise a ticket right then and there, which would take me to the request template, and I can just fill in the necessary details and start adding a ticket. So how do you do that? How do you train Zia to handle such conversations? So you need to go back to setup, and we have a dedicated section for Zia. Under that, if you go into Zia chatbot, you have a section that says blended conversations. So here we just saw how the FAQs work. So if I open answer FAQs conversation, this is how you build it, where what options do you want to present to your end user. And this a very simple conversation that we have built here, such that if I choose a particular option and if the particular condition matches, I want to give them the two options where I'm showing them with a solution. If I click on cannot send emails, it's going to give me this particular document, and this is how you can just preview it at any point of time. Whenever you're building a conversation, you can just directly preview them then right in there. And if yes, let me just quickly close that. If it is a yes, if it solved my issue, it's a success story, and it's going to just give me a message saying that glad that I was able to help you, have a great day, and it's going to end right then and there. If not, if I click on no, if it's still not unresolved, it's going to give me a failure card saying that unfortunately it couldn't help me, and I've embedded a URL right here, as normally has how you do on I've inserted the template URL. So clicking on that will redirect me to the next step. So likewise, you can create new conversations and you can add them as a quick action to Zia. Every time you create a conversation and you publish them, you are helping your end users to handle any L1 queries then and there, so which would save time for end users as well, and also reduce load for your technicians. If you have any specific requirements that you want to achieve, or if there is any help that is required on your end to build a conversation on your organization, do reach out to our support with your use case, and our team will be more than happy to help you out with. So finally, we'll see our latest integration with Zoho Circuit, which is our low-code or no-code platform that enables you to create a single-touch automation workflow. So the entire idea behind a Zoho Circuit is to create automations which would reduce the load of your technicians by repeatedly handling a mundane or a repetitive task, and that is usually associated with a lot of different use cases. Here we have taken a very common use case where Zilker, due to the part of, since they are a rapidly growing organization, they usually have a lot of onboarding requests where a new employee joins their company, and every time the technicians need to raise a ticket, along with that, they have a lot of tasks that need to perform in order to provision them accordingly. So every time a service request is raised to onboard a user, you need to make sure that the user is added to the Active Directory. If you have an on-premise Active Directory, then that needs to be done through a PowerShell script. And at the same time, if you also want the user to be provisioned on the Microsoft Teams channel, they need to be provided with an Outlook mailbox. And at the same time, if you have any legacy databases that you need to add an entry to, all these are manual tasks that your technician needs to do one by one. And if, let's say, if there are like 100 new employees joining on a particular day, then it's 100 into 3 tasks, 300 mundane repetitive tasks that needs to be followed or done by a technician in order to close a service request. To enable that, we have circuits now. So to use circuits, you need to go back to setup. Under apps and add-ons, you have integration. Sorry, let me take you right here. Yeah, under apps and add-ons, you have integration. And scroll down to the bottom, you will have the Zoho Circuit card. So once you enable Zoho Circuit, if you now go back to setup, to the bottom, you have a new section called Zoho Circuit. Right. So here, once again, you can build a lot of circuits, and each circuit can have its own purpose and the use cases that it can resolve. And let me just quickly show you one. So we just talked about how employee onboarding can be a repetitive task that needs to be performed by a technician. So we have built a circuit that can do everything for you with just a click of a button. Right. So this is how basically a circuit would look like. And here in this case, every time an employee onboarding request is raised, I want to first create an account in Office 365. And then once that is done, I want 3 different tasks that needs to be run parallelly. First one being adding the user to the right AD group, putting an entry on your on-premise Active Directory, and also making sure that they are provisioned on the right data center. And meanwhile, while that's being done, I also want another task to be done, wherein once the user is onboarded, I want them to be added to the right Microsoft Teams channel and to the right distribution group. And at the same time, add them as an entry into the legacy database, and send a notification to the facilities manager. Only if all these 4 tasks are completed, I want to consider that this user is successfully onboarded and provisioned. And I want to add a summary to the ticket on how this has done and how it is closed. Right? So to build such a circuit, you need to click on new circuit and click on save. Right. So you have a lot of options to the left hand side. It's basically how we saw workflow. It's a drag and drop canvas, and you can progress your circuit from one point to another. So you have the flow controls here. How do you want the flow to happen? So do you want that to happen sequentially, or do you want to have that happen parallelly or in branches? We just saw in the employee onboarding scenario that the first task that needs to be done is to create an account in Office 365. So that's a straightforward task where from the first state, I need to go into the second state, create Office 365 account. Right. So once that is done, I want parallelly multiple statuses that needs to be updated. So from from create Office 365, I want to create an AD account. Right. So here is where I can add a lot of path. So this path this is where once you create an AD account, I can sequentially do a lot of tasks at the same time. And let me also quickly open the existing circuit to give you an idea on how you can perform all these tasks. So let me go back to circuits, and I'll open employee onboarding parallelly to give you an idea. Right. So to create an account in Office 365, this is done as part of a custom function. So you can, at every stage, so you have defined what needs to happen and how it needs to happen. Is it going to be a pass state from one state to another, or if it's a parallel state where parallel executions need to happen, or if you want to branch out from one point where you need to have a sequential actions that needs to happen, right? So once you define that, under each and every state, you need to define what action needs to happen. So here we have a custom function that is being executed, that is creating an account in Office 365. But here to check the region and add the user in Active Directory, that's basically we are performing a partial script, which we have on the left-hand side as either if it's a predefined one that we have, like installing a Windows server, or to start a service or to stop a service, you can just drag and drop whichever that is required. If not, if you want to perform a specific PowerShell script or a Linux script or even an SSH task that needs to happen, you can also do that as well. So let me take you back to setup and circuits again. You have the circuit configuration where you can install all the functions that is required for every single circuit. So here I've added a lot of functions, and this can either be on the Deluge language, or you can make use of Java, Python, or Node.js and write your own function, and which will be executed when the circuit moves from one state to another. And for actions that you need to take on your on-premise AD, you need a connector that connects our Service Desk Cloud with your on-premise AD, which is what we call as a bridge, where bridge is basically an executable file you can download right from here, and you can install it on your server. And that basically acts as a bridge between our platform and your on-premise platform. And you can use that within. If I go back to add user in AD, you'll see the bridge that I've used here, and whatever actions that I want to perform is being mapped right over here. So once again, I need to emphasize here that we have a lot of frequently used tasks that is available readily as part of the circuit configuration, like adding a user to a group, or adding a user itself to your Active Directory is already available. It's just a drag and drop. But if you want to perform a specific PowerShell script, you need to build one, and you can incorporate it right over here as scripts, and once again invoke them inside circuit. And you can also invoke webhooks, just how you do functions and scripts. You can also invoke webhooks and pass your bridge credentials right here on the service desk platform. And if you don't feel safe to have your credentials stored here, you can also store the credentials on the server where you have your bridge installed. Circuit is capable of getting the credentials from the server directly from the bridge itself, right? So likewise, you can build an entire workflow, and whenever an onboarding ticket is created, you need to create a trigger point as well. So you have created a circuit which will automatically take care of all the tasks, but when do you want that to happen? That's available easily as a trigger, where once you create a new trigger and you can specify the template what you want, and as action you can execute a circuit. So if the condition matches, that is, if the approval status is approved, and if the template is the employee onboarding template, automatically execute the circuit. So upon approval, all these are going to happen sequentially, and if needed, parallelly, making sure everything is done. So typically, a circuit would look like this. Once you start a circuit, it would be in an amber color, stating that it's running, and every time a particular task is completed, it would go ahead and finish it and turn it into a green color. And depending on the number of tasks or the number of scripts that you're going to execute, the execution time would vary. And in this case, it took around three and a half seconds to complete this entire task we just talked about. And I know it's a bit technical. It's giving you a vague idea on a 10-minute presentation cannot suffice. So we have posted our in-depth video tutorial on how Zoho Circuit works as part of the chat window on the floating bar of the screen right now. You can just make use of the webinar link, and that would explain how circuits work, how each and every state within circuits work, and how with a live example demonstrating from one state to another, giving you a successful demonstration. With this, we are at the end of today's presentation. We'll do a quick recap. So today we saw how you can build request and problem lifecycles that can guide your technicians through the entire ticketing process. We saw how transitions can help you move a ticket as well as take actions such as triggering task or triggering a webhook or a custom function at any point of time. We also saw how you can make use of the dedicated RCA section, that is the root cause analysis section inside the problem module, to make sure that a similar problem does not arise in the future. We also saw how you can create and deploy changes and releases within your organization with the help of a workflow. And once again, workflow also had a lot of capabilities such as sending out notifications, triggering webhooks, and custom functions throughout the way. And along the line, we also saw asset lifecycles, which is similar to problem and request lifecycle, and how we can make sure that your inventory is tightly maintained and you avoid all the unnecessary cost. Finally, we saw how blended conversations work within ZIA, and that can act as an individual L1 technician to avoid creating a lot of incoming tickets, and also making sure that a screening process is in place. Finally, we saw the latest integration with Zoho Circuits to create single-touch automation workflows, to which we also have presented you with a link, webinar link that would in-depth deal with the circuit process. Please do check that out. And with that, we are at the end of today's session. So you can always reach out to our support portal. Our support email address is also posted on the chat panel as well. Or you can also go to our website, servicedeskplus.com/support.html, the link that you see on the screen, and where you can find our admin guide, our release notes, our latest product videos, and you have our community where you can interact with other customers as well. And as always, we always welcome feedback, so feel free to write to us at hello@servicedeskplus.com. And during the earlier part of today's presentation, we talked about the customer success program, where we have a tailored program that would help our customers leverage the complete potential of the application. The entire aim is to boost productivity and make sure that the organization is using the application to the fullest. So you can just scan the QR code that you see on the screen right now, and you can enroll on our customer success program. Our team would directly reach out to you to schedule a session with you and perform a health check. With that, we are at the end of today's presentation. I thank you guys for joining today, and I hope to see you guys in the next one. Thank you. Cheers.